report. We'll start with our update from the city manager on community development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be a quick update. Tonight is, we hope, a short meeting. We have one public hearing on the Donnell Street project. Our next meeting will be January 19th, and the public hearing will be on Stern petition. We'll have a public hearing on January 26th on the Croon petition, which is Porter Square to Harvard Square, and along Mass Ave. And we'll also have discussion of the board's rules and regulations at that meeting. February 2nd will be the town gown meeting, and that will be at the senior center, not in this room. So other updates are just that at last night's council meeting, the city council adopted the Donnell petition with a provision that staff could recommend some, with a delayed adoption to, May 1st is the expected date, and staff has an opportunity to propose additional modifications in the interim to address some concerns that we had, DPW, ISD, CDD had raised about potential basement flooding and some building code contradictions. So we will be working on that, and there will be a petition staff will forward some revisions that suggested revisions that staff will forward that will be coming for public hearing on that.
So that was a petition about basement apartments.
Yes, and the board has suggested severing it.
Right.
The council adopted it in its as filed format, but they recognized that there had been several sets of suggestions for changes, and so which is why they used this strategy of an effective date of May 1st to allow for additional changes that we may have that we may want to propose.
So any additional changes would require a petition to amend what they adopted?
Essentially, yes.
And then further hearings?
Yes. And last night there was a new petition that was filed, and a public hearing has been scheduled on it for the 3rd. And that is the City Council hearing at the ordinance committee.
The new petition is filed by what? Patrick Barrett again?
No, it's a completely different petition, the Cohen petition, and it actually addresses this particular project area. I don't have all the details, but perhaps Jeff can explain if you have any questions about that. None of us have had a real chance to process that in detail because it was just filed last night.
I'm confused. So does that new
That's a
petition?
completely separate petition addressing Donnell Street area.
Oh.
Just wanted to give you a separate from the basement. I wanted to mention it just because you have this case before you today, just so you know that there is a zoning petition that was filed last night, and you may hear a public comment about some of that.
Thank you. Liza, are there any transcripts?
We have the December 8th transcript, which is certified as complete.
Motion to adopt that? All those in favor? All right, we now have a hearing on planning board case number 307 relating to 9 Donnell Street. It's a special permit to construct 2 single-family homes on a lot in the Residence B district. It seeks a waiver for setback for parking
Mead and Tallerman with offices in Concord, Newburyport, and Millis. I'm here this evening representing the 9 Donnell Street Realty Trust, the applicant for 2 special permits from your board. With me this evening I have multiple individuals. Robert McHale, who is the trustee of the 9 Donnell Street Realty Trust, waving his hand. He is the applicant before you today. John Walker, who is in the front row in the suit, is the project designer and architect. Can answer any questions you might have relative to project design, which we'll cover momentarily. And Mr. G, who is the project manager, is with us as well. He's operating the PowerPoint for me this evening. I want to be sure before we get underway that you have the various submittals that we've made. Ms. Payton has been kind enough to facilitate getting these documents to you. We made our original submittals back in mid-October, mid to late October, our application package for these 2 special permits. We supplemented that in late November, on November 30th, in fact, with an additional submittal acknowledging that pursuant to section 10.43, the urban design guidelines are incorporated by reference. And so we provided an item by item over a series of a number of pages explanation as to how we believe we've satisfied your urban design guidelines pursuant to section 19.30 of the zoning ordinance. Finally, we presented to Ms. Payton an application supplement dated January 7th. This application supplement consisted of a number of different items that we received over the course of the past month or so. We were originally scheduled to be before your board in mid-December. There was a publication error, and so as a consequence, we were continued to tonight's hearing. And in the course of the past month, we've accumulated a few additional items. One is we've attached to our January 7th letter multiple letters of support for the project from a number of the neighborhood residents. We've submitted a summary of our neighborhood outreach efforts. I understand that the board has been contemplating, and correct me if I'm wrong, it may be that you've already adopted some revisions to your rules and regulations. And an important component of that, as I see it, is what you call the pre-application early community engagement. And so in an effort to proceed in a manner consistent with those forthcoming regulations, and also hopeful that we could be a good neighbor with this project, we have the project team, I speak personally, the project team has met with the neighbors over the course of a series of individual and group meetings that began back in the early part of 2015. And we provided to you an outline of all of those various efforts, and there are a few additional efforts that have been undertaken in the past week or 2 since that document was prepared. We provided to you with this January 7th submittal revised building foundations and sections, and in fact, I think I see there on the table, I'm not sure if they've been circulated, further revised plans that were just updated within the past 48 hours to reflect some of the comments that we received in the CDD memo that we got. The comments were relatively limited, and I'm sure that you'll have a member of the staff speak to those, but there were a few comments, recommendations, things that could be done to the project, to the site that would improve upon it, and we've done our best on short notice to try and incorporate some of those modifications.
Excuse me a second. So I don't have many of these documents that are being referred to. I think dated January 7th.
We have in here, there were the ones that are sitting on the table and looking.
What's sitting on the table?
One copy, I have
Okay,
here.
so
That's the state decision.
From traffic.
So if there is, I guess what my point is, if there's a lot of relevant information that I can't assume we have it if it was submitted very recently.
Right. I think the January 7th is posted on the website. And since I don't get the packets, I visit the website, but I can understand that not everybody does that. Liza, do you know, have things been distributed to all the members?
Plans that were distributed to the board were the plans for October 15th and December 22nd. There's another set. And then materials that they brought with them this evening.
Well, the January 7th materials that also included renderings of one building, one structure. So I don't know if that I read it correctly. What was the by right? That's the by right. Have people seen that?
To the extent that it comforts the board, we provided some of these items in advance as courtesy, understanding that some of them will be being provided late because we were, for example, responding to the CDD memo. We have all of these various plans incorporated into our PowerPoint presentation, so we will present them to you. You'll see them on the screen tonight, and we'll certainly invite any questions that you might have. Just so you know, in addition to that, we did submit a shadow study plan. We'll show those on the PowerPoint tonight. Additional shadow study documents that have been prepared, not only comparing existing to proposed conditions, but comparing the proposed to the by right site plan that we presented as well, showing a single building as opposed to two multiple buildings. So those are the submittals we've made to date. To get to the substance of the application, as I said, we've made two applications to your board for special permits. The first is an application pursuant to section 5.53 of your zoning ordinance for multiple principal structures containing residential use. The second is pursuant to section 6.44.1 of your zoning ordinance for modification of a driveway setback. What is especially interesting about that is that we're really preserving existing conditions, but because we're redeveloping the site, we're seeking relief from the board in connection with that redevelopment. The driveway already exists in its present location. We are widening it somewhat because of the fact that it's a narrow driveway as it presently stands. But that violation exists today, and we're seeking permission from the board in connection with the redevelopment to continue on with that setback. Apologize. So you have before you the first page of our PowerPoint presentation, which shows the 9 Donnell Street property. You can see the property is highlighted in blue. You can see the adjacent properties at 10 and 11 Donnell Street are highlighted in yellow. Purpose of this slide is to just give you a sense of the massing and scale of the property and adjacent properties as it exists today. Next slide. So what you've got here, this shows the proximity of the proposal. You'll see highlighted in red are the rooftops or footprints of the existing single-family structure and the garage at the rear of the site. Again, you can see the adjacent properties. You can see the proximity of those adjacent properties to the home as it exists today. There is a slide that we'll get to momentarily that shows the various zoning violations that exist on the site today with respect to the existing structure. Next slide. Again, this is just a different perspective showing the proximity of 9 Donnell Street, specifically to the front structure at 7 Donnell Street. Also is a good depiction of the scale of the property as compared to the adjacent properties, and most specifically that property at 11 Donnell Street. So this is a summary of the presentation. We prepared a number of different PowerPoints to address different issues, some of which the board may have questions about, others which it may not. Our intention is to review the current status of the property and the project, to discuss the staff memorandum and our response to it. We have performed reviews and engaged in discussions with DPW. We've performed a complete stormwater analysis of the site. We're going to talk to you a bit about sustainability and solar power at the site, and we've engaged a landscape designer to try and improve upon the aesthetics of the site in connection with the redevelopment. We also have alternate designs that we are going to show you. One is a by right design. We have chosen to pursue a special permit for the design that we have before you this evening because we believe it is a better design for the site. The by right plan, as you'll see, is a single structure, rather large in mass, but could be constructed by right on the site. Also provides for above ground parking and a garage that would face Donnell Street. We think that this is a overall better design for the site. It's in keeping with the streetscape and the design of Donnell Street generally. We also have an alternate design that would require similar relief from this board that would still provide for 2 single-family structures, but would have on-grade parking. You'll see in our development plans, if you've not already, that we're proposing depressed parking, beneath grade parking, in an effort to try and open up the site a bit, provide for open space for the use of these 2 single-family homes that are being proposed. We've got examples in one of our slides of various contemporary designs in the neighborhood. I know there were some concerns expressed when we were before the Historical Commission with the type of design proposed for the site. Some thought maybe that it was a bit too contemporary. Well, we have canvassed the neighborhood and we found that this sort of contemporary design exists throughout this rather eclectic neighborhood, in many locations within a few blocks. So we provided examples of those. We provided a shadow study as well, as I mentioned before. The shadows most significantly, to the extent that they affect any adjacent property, they most significantly affect the Donnell Street property, and we've tried to compare the existing conditions with the proposed conditions. We believe that, and we'll get to it, that there is either, in most cases, there's either the same amount of shadows or there's an improvement upon existing conditions. Next slide. Design challenges. We faced a few design challenges, and again, I use the proverbial we, but it's more John Walker that faced these design challenges than I. The first was providing high-quality private open space for what is intended to be a development that will cater to families. The idea is that we would have sufficient open space on site. As I mentioned, to do that, we depressed the parking and we provided for a significant number of windows facing into the open space area of the site to provide for a sense of connection with the exterior of the site and the ability to use that open space seasonally. Treatment of the street edge was important. You might know, if you've seen some of the photographs that have been circulated and reviewed the plans closely, that this site is located at the intersection between Donnell and R.C. Kelly Street. If you're driving down R.C. Kelly Street and you were to continue on and not stop, you would run into this home. It's directly opposite the intersection of R.C. Kelly Street. So the headlights, as a consequence, sort of sweep down and across the building face as they're turning on one way to Donnell Street. There's also a change in grade from side to side within the site, so that was an additional challenge with respect to designing the site and, of course, with respect to stormwater management. We also wanted to minimize the impact. There are existing side yard, front yard, setback violations. We wanted to limit those or eliminate those to the extent it was possible to do so. We also wanted to decrease the height of the structure and keep it consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. Next slide. So this shows an example of what we did not want to do, which is to create at a T intersection a fence line that would not provide for the same aesthetic, would not provide for a design that was in keeping with neighborhood character, in keeping with the streetscape of Donnell Street. We don't believe that this would have achieved that purpose. This is from Huron Avenue at a T intersection, and we try to avoid this in our design of the site. The next slide shows the existing 2-story structure on the site. The proposal is to demolish this structure. We are before you in a position where the demolition delay has expired. We appeared before your Historical Commission some time ago. The demolition delay was imposed. We were back before the Commission a number of months ago. Commission vetted the project, determined, or vetted the property and the existing home, and determined that it would not initiate a landmark designation study on the property, and thereby gave us the go-ahead to proceed with our development plans for the site, and that's why we're before you tonight. There have been a number of prior owners of the site that have not had success in pursuing redevelopment by maintaining the existing structure due to the poor condition of the existing structure and the cost that would be associated with renovating that existing structure. We presented to the Historical Commission a report, for example, that we had from a structural engineer indicating that there were serious concerns. We have since disconnected utilities from the site in an effort to maintain the public safety. But it was the determination not only of our project architect, but of that structural engineer consultant that the structure ought to be raised. That aside from just the mere finances of having to preserve it, all you'd ultimately be preserving would be a portion of its outer shell, because nothing within that structure was building code compliant per the existing current building code. You'll see here that with respect to zoning compliance, there's a setback on one side of 4.7 feet. There's a setback on the other side of 6.4 feet, we're going to actually be increasing both of those setbacks to 8.5 feet and 14.5 feet respectively with our new proposal, hence reducing the encroachment into the side yards. Similarly, the existing setback is 2.4 feet. We're proposing a 10.5 feet setback, which would bring that into conformance as well. One of the concerns with the existing structure, aside from just the poor condition, is that the use of gross floor area was not ideal. There were covered porches, there were portions of the attic that would potentially qualify. The basement was exceptionally wet. There were actually 2 sump pumps running in the basement of that property, and hence we're proceeding with this proposal that's before you. This photograph is a photograph of the detached garage that's at the rear of the site. You can see the garage is actually encroaching to an extent upon the adjacent property at 11 Donnell Street. We will be removing that encroachment, of course, as part of our redevelopment proposal. I'll make mention of it now because you've got the graphic before you, although John Walker will speak to it momentarily. And that is, you may ask when you see the depressed garage, there is a portion of that garage that is above grade, a very small portion of it. You'll be driving into the site and then down into the garage. You may ask, well, what is that above ground portion of the garage going to look like aesthetically? And it's going to look about, if not a bit less than the foundation of this garage that exists today, in terms of the portion of the proposed depressed garage that will remain above ground. With this next slide, I'm going to turn the floor over to John Walker, the project architect. The next several slides are photographs of the new proposal. He can best address those, having designed that proposal. I'll turn the floor over to him, and I'll take it back when he's done, and we can proceed further. John, if you're ready.
This is the existing structure, and one of the big improvements that will be made by replacing the house. The new houses are 20 feet wide, and both side setbacks are much wider. It'll be set back from Donnell Street, and there's enough room to have a front yard and landscaping. There's an interesting feature across the street where the corner of R.C. Kelly Street over by this stop sign has a raised front yard with a stone base and some nice planting underneath it and some trees. We wanted to reflect that on the corner of the house, and we're using the same materials. We've had a landscaper do a plan for the tree growth, which is similar to the trees on the other side of the street. This is it. I can't see too clearly in this slide the retaining wall. But that's the openness that you'll see with the new design. It just lightens up the street tremendously, and the facade is rather blank. There's been comments about that, but the reason for that is the amount of lights from cars that you see all the way down R.C. Kelly Street. It starts at the top, and it's a long ride with the lights bouncing into the front of the house. So there's some protection from that. This is the site plan. And this is a proposed plan, and that's the driveway shared beside Mr. Cohen's driveway. And the garage is removed. That was encroaching on his property in the back on the back end of the courtyard plan. And the cars disappear, and there's 3 cars parked underneath it. That's what frees up the yard, so there's open space for the rear unit, and there's a different kind of urban open space for the front unit. There's a terrace on top of the garage with plantings and different outdoor rooms created with landscaping features. The back is just natural landscaping, and it's treated in a more natural way than the first house. But they both have outside space. There's a walkway that goes along the upper border of the site of the higher border, and that's where the entrance is into the houses. They both enter on the same side. And then the great room is in the back of the structure. It's a very dramatic room. It's very tall, and has a lot of glass out in the back of it. The rest of the house is really conventional. It's about the size of a post-war garrison colonial, and it has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths upstairs. It has a bath, a kitchen, and a dining room, which all sort of blend together on the first floor. So it's not a big house at all, but we've tried to make it as dramatic as we could for the size of the house. This is a view from coming down Donnell Street, and this is the existing house, and it's these houses are all in a straight line. That's number 11 on the end, the yellow one, number 7 on the front, and we're back. We have it set back with the average setbacks of the adjacent houses, and it's about 10'6" back from the street, where currently now it's barely a foot. A foot. The front porch of the house is right on the sidewalk. This is the main entrance to the house, and it's sort of like it's emphasized. It has a glass, opaque glass side window that looks out to our street alley, and then the doorway is on the side of it, and it has a canopy that goes above it that gives some shelter to you as you're at the doorway, and some feeling of security. And then that corner of the house, the whole thing is emphasized, that it's sort of like emphasizing where the entrance to the house is.
Excuse me, you said opaque glass? Is that what you
On the entranceway.
No, it's tinted.
Tinted.
Can you see through it, or can you see light through it?
You can see light through it, yes. This is the stone wall that's across the street on the uphill side. And we did a retaining wall like that, and we recently, in one of the last minute changes, we put a double curve in. Our curve is, it's too high. It's a problem because you're driving a car out of a sloping driveway coming up to the street. So we've lowered the corner and we made a double curve where the wall drops off 15 feet earlier and dies into the side of the house. And then there's a much lower wall that continues as Donnell Street descends. I think it descends about 3 feet across the front of the house. We went through a lot of calculations with the DPW and Communities and Development regarding the formulas that they use, that they have as guidelines, and they have to do with the trajectory of your view when you're arriving to the curb cut itself, and they have a distance judging where the driver's eyeball is and how much you have to see on the side, and they have numerical calculations, which we went back and we altered the retaining wall just for that reason. And it's correct. I mean, we sort of got carried away with our landscape feature that we were mimicking on the other side of the street, and sort of forgot about the blind spot that was project to constructing. Well, this is interesting. The overhead wires on Donnell Street crisscross from one side of the street to the other. They're primarily on this property side, but just at the property, it goes diagonally across Donnell Street, and it gives us the ability to plant trees that don't have to be limited to the underside of the wires, and it gives a better perspective of the house. So we've taken advantage of that with some of the larger trees planted on the front setback. There was an attempt to make that intersection of R.C. Kelly and Donnell Street into like a little square where it had similar landscape features. I mean, it'd be nice if you could pave the whole street and just have, you know, how you have those elevated platforms in streets. It'd be nice, something like that, but we're not doing it. It's just trying to define it with landscaping and with the work that we're doing on the property. Again, this is the side entrance to the house, and I think we've seen a very similar slide to that. And this is a view looking up Donnell Street, and you can see how dramatic the retaining wall is. It's been changed so the wall drops at that height, and the higher wall returns into the house back here, And then there's a sweep of earth and landscaping that is down at this 3-foot high level, and it continues on into the driveway as the paving descends into the garage. This is an aerial view of the same thing. You can see, well, there's the double wall that shows you how we've tried to improve that. And you can see the size and shape of the house beside it is very similar massing. It's similar heights, it's actually higher than ours as well in all regards. But it's the same proportions, it's sort of like the proportions of a 3-decker, but it's only a 2-decker, and it's reduced on all sides, length, width, and height. But the proportions are a very familiar building shape in Cambridge.
Excuse me, Mr. Wu, going back to that last slide. So is that the current configuration of the retaining wall?
Yes. Yes.
It's reflected on the new paper plan.
A number of the city departments called us and told us about the problem that was created. They've been there before, I think. This is a slide showing the massing from the back, and that's the terraced area. It's not really drawn deleted, but on the plans it is. And that's the height of the foundation of the existing garage. Not the garage above was another 9 feet, 10 feet above that. But that's gone. And that allows the sunlight to traverse from beyond this large house at 11 Donnell Street, directly across through the site and onto the common property and beyond. And the garage blocks a lot of that right now. Back. The vented roof on this house that's not reality. That's a glitch in the software program that no one's been able to close the attic off. I'd like to draw little people out there looking out at us. That's technology. Nothing like a pencil. So this is a site looking through from the back. This would be Donnell Street out here, and that's the second house. And you can see all that space is opened up now. And that's kind of neat. And that house is so large that whatever shadows we have from the rear house, the shadows are already created by the house that's beyond it. And there's a lot of big trees which you don't see at all. And there's tree shadows everywhere, in addition to just the geometric shadows that we try to show for the impact of the building structures themselves.
Just the other direction.
This is the other direction, and we're back in front of the street. The massing. The hill doesn't look so dramatic, but it is dramatic when you walk it. And the sidewalks will be repaired. I understand the city is planning on doing the sidewalks and out of their street rebuilding program. But there's tremendous jumps from aprons up to the main travel lane of the sidewalk that I don't think you could ride a power scooter up the slope of the directions. And this part's where it's sinking, so hopefully all that gets corrected along the way. This is from the inside looking out towards the building in the back. And it's just a large open space, and it connects you with the outside terrace. And you're looking at a background. The house in the back, the doors are on the side, the windows are on the side, so you're looking at a blank wall, basically. But you do have more open space than you had before for viewing beyond the building itself. And this is the basement plan. And over here is the driveway. You drive down the driveway, the door is right there. You swing into the parking garage. There's 3 spaces. It's 3 feet wide, so they're like 11-foot spaces, but they're actually 8s with the end spaces having a larger amount of space to maneuver the car backwards. And the beauty of this is that the cars can always drive out. They don't have to back out as they do now. That's the second house in the background. This is the interior of the main level of the house. This is the entry. Oh, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place. Yes. Oh, this is the lower level. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're down the basement. This is the lower level of the basement, and there's utility rooms in this area, and that's a possible workspace and an open space on the other end. And you go down the stairway and you're in the garage. This is the main level. That's the slide I thought we had. This is the main level, and this is the kitchen here. This is an added window which connects to the street. The sink was over here in an island. We moved the sink back over to the counter that faces the street. And the rest of it's wide open. It's dining and living. And this is the upper level of the stairway here. And this is a child's bedroom, a small bedroom. This bedroom is a medium-sized bedroom with a closet, and the master bedroom is on the end. They have their own private bathroom on the left-hand side of the slide, and right-hand side as you're looking at it. And that's another bathroom for the other two bedrooms on the third floor. And that's the whole house. And the second house is a duplicate. The basement is a little bit different because you're entering the garage in that direction, and from the front house you're entering from the other. So the layout's sort of reversed. But the stairways are the same in both houses. They're all the same size. The building is 20 by 40, they're 20 by 41. And it's roughly 800 square feet per floor. And so it's
Sorry, 800 feet of
floor space. Just,
floor space.
yeah, I'm just giving the size of the house,
Square
not
feet.
the
I
actual
just
numbers.
didn't hear what you said, if you could just say it, give it back to me and doors
Yeah,
are
I know, it's
closing.
difficult. That the building is roughly 20 by 41. So it's a little over 800 square feet per floor. So the two floors is 1,600 feet. I mean, they're single apartments, they're much bigger than that. This is mine.
So the purpose of this slide is just to give the board a bit of a sense as to the abutter list, so to speak. Certified abutters and abutters to abutters within 300 feet, those entitled to notice per the act and per your zoning ordinance. We made an effort, in addition to the mail notice that they all received by law, we made an effort to provide flyers to the substantial majority of these individuals. We didn't go beyond Walden, we didn't go, I think there were a couple of properties along Appleton that maybe we didn't catch, but for the most part, the properties that are shaded here in blue were provided with flyers notifying them of the project, and as I said, the project team made efforts to meet with as many individuals as they could to familiarize themselves with this project, and I think that is indicated. I think there's potential opposition to any project, so I don't know what might be said later tonight, but I can say that what's been relayed to me by the project team, and I think what has been relayed in the letters of support that we've submitted to you, is that those neighbors who have responded to us and have submitted letters to us have responded favorably and are generally in favor of what we consider to be an improvement to the neighborhood, an improved aesthetic to the site, no doubt, and an effort to provide for family housing in a neighborhood that needs it, and in keeping with the general design and streetscape of Donnell Street. I think that's the last slide in this presentation. I do want to provide, I mentioned before, Charles Teague is the project manager for the project, and I think that he has a few things to say concerning our dealings with DPW, stormwater. You've already heard about the slope of Donnell Street and of the site itself. As a consequence of that, stormwater is typically not all that great of a concern with single-family homes, two-family homes, a couple of homes on a single site. But we wanted to be sure that we address that issue in connection with this site because of the problems that we envisioned given the slope of the site. And then, of course, I mentioned before our efforts to address shadowing, not so much with the 7 Donnell Street property, but with the 11 Donnell Street property. And Charles can address those as well. So with that, I'll yield the floor to you, and I'll start up the next presentation for you.
You guys should be happy I'm working for a living these days. But anyways. So, actually, there was, the third item on the CDD memo was to have DPW review. DPW has been, always reviews, DPW signs your building permit, and they also do the curb cut permit. So they are intimately involved with the specifics of the garage and the ramp. But they've also been involved for a long time in this. They've issued the permits, inspected the sewer cutting cap, and then they signed the demolition permit as well. We also met with them, with the neighbors from number 7 here and number 11. We met in July, and DPW will review stormwater systems. And what they did do was require that we get a licensed civil engineer and do the computer modeling of the rain on 7 and 9, and which has been complete. That modeling is complete for 9, and we have enough room to handle the required amount of storage. So that will be in the rear of the lot. Now, DPW is committed to regrading the intersection and adding the catch basin, because during all the stormwater analysis, pointed out to them that the water doesn't actually go into the catch basin that exists at R.C. Kelly, because it's in the wrong place. And it's also connected to the wrong sewer. So it was a part of the traffic and parking memo, which said that we should be aware that they're working on the street. They're working on the street because we pointed this stuff out to them. And we've also had the city electrician get Verizon to raise the wires, but we haven't up to where they should be, but we haven't got Comcast done. So we've been intimately involved with the city agencies. So this is back to this stormwater. The way stormwater works is that there's retention and infiltration, so we're going to, and the DPW is a standard for the amount of water you have to store on site, and we're storing that. So this seems like an office building project, but we're doing all that. And then so one of the reasons for the parapets and extra height in the roof is to direct the stormwater and control it and get it down into the system. And then finally, we're doing extra off-site mitigation for the people uphill in 7. We're helping them install a stormwater system, and then we're using the same civil engineer. And we also did the preliminary engineering for all that work, and we paid for that for off-property. So the next one. And then in the submission, it says solar ready. What is solar ready? It's why is more important is because all the tax incentives go to the end user. It's so complex is that it's easier that if we do basically the installation ahead of time, and all they have to do is sign up. So what we have is the parapets to screen the solar panels. Well, we'll make sure the roof penetrations are out of the way. We'll engineer the roof for the extra load, because on these flat roofs, they just hold them down with ballast. And we will build in conduits from the basement up to the roof, and we'll allocate the space in the utility room, and put in the appropriate electric panels. And then we're going to add electric vehicle charging stations in the garage. So, and then Pam Hart is not here tonight. She's been a resident of Donnell Street since the 60s, and a long-time landscape designer, and had her own landscape company, and done many of the properties. So this is the wall again, and we can go to the next slide. And this is Pam's summary of features that I was supposed to memorize, but I haven't. But the key element is that she's replicating the wall and replicating the landscaping, and we can get 2 trees in front. And she talks about minimal watering and native plants and planted vines and all-season interest. And so we're back to the wall, and you can see that there's this whole, that in addition to the trees, there's this whole intricately planted understory, and we're replicating that. We're going to have steps up similarly, and we're replicating the curve of the wall, actually multiple times. So this is just a quick review, and this is what she did 3 different styles, and she called this the best of Donnell, and that's off to the right. That's the trees and the curved wall. And then the next slide. And then this is the courtyard, which is very rectilinear, and there's, you can't really, I can see why John was having trouble. I can't see anything on this. What this is planters on top of the courtyard, and it's an L shape. So this is all very rectilinear because she was inspired by the back wall of the rear building, which will be a large rectangle. And then finally you get to the end, and she's proposed much more organic style where everything's curved, and it's creating ways to drag people outside to the outside. And finally, these are the kind of fences we're going to need with the neighbors at number 7 to replicate. And so we're going to have this lower fence to the right of this tree, and then we'll go up to the higher fence the rest of the way down and intersperse it with some of the elements of the trellis fence. And I think that's about it. Do you want me to do the rest?
Do you want to, or do you want to have John do the rest?
John, do you want me to do the other ones?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
We did.
All right.
What
Let's, because it's
Yep.
5:00.
Yep, go
I
ahead.
think we should, yeah. We're supposed to have a short night tonight.
The next two presentations are very brief ones, but I promise that we present to the board alternate designs as well as consistency with the contemporary design within the neighborhood. So we've just got a few examples for you.
So the first one is two buildings, 20 by 40, with the parking in between. And the driveway is shared with the walkway. There's two entrances. One entrance is traditionally on the street on the right front, and then you come down the walkway and enter the side. And you can sort of turn one car around pretty easily. It looks to me like a lot of people would end up backing out this driveway. The real thing that I don't like about this design is that the front unit has very little exterior space. The deck is narrow, there are views of cars, and the exterior space really goes from this set of plans along the side of the building. And so that was the whole, and when we looked at it and then thought of depressing the cars, that's where we went. So, next slide. Go back. So, this is just basically taking the current design and sliding the front house back. So the rear unit is identical, it's the identical design, the identical setbacks, and the front unit is moved back. We once again put a garage up front, and this comes out to be over 100 feet long. It has the view from the street is of a garage and parking, and then really to get the open space requirements, you'd end up doing roof decks. And roof decks, these roof decks would be pretty spectacular. Even on the deck over the garage would look all the way up R.C. Kelly, so you'd have a really long view. And then when you, on the other roof deck, you're going to be looking out either side, you have long views there, and then you're on the back of Observatory Hill, and so you get that drop. And so it'd be very nice for the residents of that unit. Wouldn't be so nice for the neighbors. So so that's the view down R.C. Kelly. It's pretty suburban. Next one, and another view. Next, please. And from the rear, you can just see that it's combined. That's pretty much the same. Next, please. Over here, the important thing here is this is uphill number 7 to the left, and there's windows that overlook their open area, their parking, with their driveway and their parking area. Next slide. And then similarly on the other side, there's a big bank of windows, and it's overlooking the big open space for the 11-year yard. So we can just go to the are the contemporary ones. So there's a whole series of contemporary ones. Many have been designed by Q Sung Woo, who's before the board for one of the buildings in North Point. We did the Harvard Housing where the old Mahoney's Garden Center was. So back off the top of the screen is the, what I call a modern building, but it's the former art studio, and it's now personal office space, and that's 11 rear. And then right across the intersection from the site are two modern townhouses, and then Q Sung Woo designed the addition on number 8, and then Marianne Thompson did the back of number 8. And then this residence with the domed roofs was designed by Q Sung Woo, and then across the street, and then flows out and goes all the way to Concord Ave, and incorporates the library at the corner of Donnell and Concord is what I understand to be Harvard Observatory Housing. There's a co-op. Next slide, please. And so that's that Harvard Housing there. There's the back of number 8, Donnell, in the middle. You can see the low shed roof with the high windows, and that's the 8 rear. And then, yes, and this is the residence designed by Q Sung Woo. See the barrel roofs. There's a flat roof. I think it's a deck on the other side. Go ahead. And there's another view. Oh, next slide, please. And there's modern townhouses or postmodern. And next slide, please. And these are big, tall houses. And anyways, next slide, please. Now, this is down the hill. This was a 1970 sort of replica cottage, which has been recently renovated in sort of a modern style. And this is 11 rear, the former art studio. So it has these giant windows and very tall ceilings. And that's about that.
If I could just conclude briefly, I think it's been a lengthy presentation. We wanted to be sure that we appropriately address the various considerations that are before the board, and I guess that's how I'd like to conclude. We submitted as part of our application, I submitted as part of our application a lengthy memo. This is dated October 15th. I presume you have it. It was part of our initial submittal.
Did you want to do shadows?
Do you want to address shadows?
Do people want to see shadows?
We've submitted a shadow report to you. Do you want to see the presentation, or are you satisfied with what you have?
If we have questions, we'll
Okay. So I just want to draw your attention, and again, we focused our presentation this evening on giving you a good overview, or we hope it gave you a good overview of what we're proposing for the site. I didn't spend a lot of time addressing the various criteria of your ordinance because I've done so in my letter. With that said, I think it's important that the board, in addition to reflecting generally on the proposal for the site, look to the task that's before it, the standards. With respect to the driveway setback, the standard is a relatively simple one. If site-specific factors favor the relief that's being sought, the board ought to grant that relief. And I think that's a simple one, I say, because we presented to you site-specific factors. We presented to you a relatively narrow site, a site that is already narrow as it exists today, a driveway that is far too narrow as it exists today, and a proposal that increases upon the setbacks on both sides. But to do that, we need to maintain the driveway where it is to still provide access to that depressed garage. We've also addressed the more specific special permit criteria to placement of multiple principal structures in the lot, and that's in the early part of our letter. And that's sort of a two-part test. It's an either-or. It's the development in the form of 2 or more structures in the lot will not significantly increase or may reduce the impact of the new construction should it occur in a single structure. And then if that criterion is not satisfied, there's a multi-part test, various factors that are to be weighed by the board. And I've made a case that I do believe, based upon what's been presented to you this evening, that we satisfy that first test, that there are real benefits, and we've gone into some detail in the letter, that are offered by this proposal as opposed to the by right proposal, the proposal that combines these 2 structures into one structure. Everything from the additional open space to the lesser shadows on adjacent property to the improved design and the improved streetscape from Donnell Street. But to the extent that the board wants to go further, we've also addressed at least 4 of the 6 factors that are to be weighed if the board proceeds to step 2 of that inquiry. And we believe that we've satisfied those factors as well, and we've given maybe a too lengthy of an explanation in our memorandum. So to the extent the board has questions specific to that standard, we're happy to address those questions. And concluding, we would just ask that the board grant these 2 special permits to allow the project to proceed. We've been at this for some time now. First, we were subject to the demo delay, then we made an effort to get before this board, and with the publication error, we're here even later than we had expected. So we would appreciate the board's action on this and allowing us to proceed with construction of the site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions right now? Thank you.
Right now, there are 5 trees in the backyard. Do any of them survive? 3 of them are not in the footprint of your structures.
I'm the landscape guy tonight. You're supposed to see, well, I won't say, but she's not 80 years old. She's younger than that. But anyways, one of the trees was transplanted. There's 3 small fruit trees, and they were to be transplanted. They were an attempt at transplant, and then there was a large Norway maple, which is part of our agreement with our neighbors at number 7. We're going to take down. So, in a word, no.
Because your survey shows 5 12-inch trees. And I guess the survey is incorrect?
No, 5.
Yes.
There's
I took out my magnifying glass.
Yes.
Verify.
all right. Well, there's I don't know. There's a large Norway maple at the end, which they asked because it's overhanging their property and their residence and their house. They asked us to take it down, and we didn't think it would survive. And then there's 3 fruit trees. And then one says an 8-inch caliper thing, which was actually a rhododendron trimmed as a tree.
Okay.
So it was extraordinary planting. I successfully found someone to give it a good home.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We found someone to give the rhododendron a good home.
Are there other questions right now? If not, we'll go to public comment.
I guess,
I'm sorry.
just to get, so you said that the parapet walls on the roof would screen the solar collectors if they went up. And the drawing showed the parapet walls to be 1 foot tall.
Horizontal collectors.
I reviewed the solar. I went to several presentations on solar, and the current thinking is to get more power, you don't tilt the panels, you just get more panels. So you put the panels flat on a flat roof, and they just ballast them. And so you don't put penetrations in the roof, so your roof doesn't leak, and people are a lot happier.
Okay, and my third question is probably not really relevant here, but I've been looking at the floor plans. So if you're on the 2nd floor, you walk down 6 steps, and then there's a closet straight ahead of you. And you can't get down to the 1st floor.
No, that closet is actually cabinetry that's floating above the landing.
So we have to float like 4 feet above. And then when you go to turn down, you get to the point where the door is, there's only about 6 feet of headroom and it's there. So how do you get into that bedroom?
Say that. Where?
I'm just trying. I guess what bothers me is, I think the drawing is inaccurate, and I'm just wondering, therefore, how I look at the other things.
No, well, the drawing, there is a drawing that has this complex piece of cabinetry which provides not a full closet for the third and front bedroom. So what that is showing is that the stairs come up from the main floor, and so it's a scissor stair. You go up, you go across the platform, and you go back up again. So instead of having a full height over the platform, they're stealing some space with the cabinetry because it's a small bedroom for a child. And so they don't get a full closet. They get cabinetry that projects into the higher section of the stair.
Hugh, could you tell us where we're looking at this?
SP-4 is the floor plan.
Yeah,
SP-4.
SP-4.
Okay.
And the third thing is about the stairs. When you walk down to the basement, you walk down about 8 threads and then you hit your head on the wall to the bathroom.
What's wrong with that?
Those stair, the stairs are stacked underneath. The stair from the main level to the upper landing is stacked on top of the stair to the basement. And the stair to the basement is going to come out, it's going to be, yes, there's a clearance issue and it'll be framed and there'll be some steel there to address the clearance issue down in the lower section. But those two stairs are stacked on top of each other.
Okay, so that, I was
So what
thinking
the wonderful CAD software might have done is you might be projecting the upper section from the landing to the second floor. It might be projecting that, and that's what you're reading as a stair down when it's a stair up to the second floor.
Well, I guess I don't, I'm sorry. I'm an architect. I've been designing stairs for 40 years. That stair doesn't work. What you're telling me, I believe, is simply not true.
Well, I would have to look at the plans, but John could look at the plans.
So
There might be
it doesn't really make too much difference.
this was
You're going to have to make it work. There's probably room to make it work, but it doesn't work now at all.
This was a fire drill to get this plan set. We got told by traffic and parking Friday afternoon to change the site design, and then we added it in. This was.
Right, but the plans that you submitted 10/15 are not 10/15. So, anyway, I'm just interested to hear what you have to say.
Does anyone else have any questions right now? Go to public comment.
I just wanted to make sure that people have all of the materials. So there was a lot I had sent out that was dated January 7th, but the plans are dated anywhere from December 26th to December 22nd. Is that, people have that or don't have that?
Got them electronically.
Right, and I have hard copies. Okay, do you want them hard, does anybody want hard copies? Okay.
Sure, we'll take a hard copy.
Actually, might get another package in the mail, 'cause I've got a mail.
I got one tonight.
You got a package today?
I got a package.
What was in the package? Something else. Whatever, doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Okay, people, when you come, when I
Oh,
call
yeah.
your name,
Give us a call.
please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, and spell your name for the stenographer, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Lewis Hyde. And anyone who did not sign the list, you will still have an opportunity to speak, so everyone will get an opportunity to speak.
I'm Lewis Hyde, LewishYde. My wife and I own number 8 Donnell, which is kitty corner across the street. My remarks are quite brief. Of the various designs that have been presented, we much prefer the design which allows for the parking to be toward the back of the lot. We do not like the design, which has a garage and therefore also essentially a parking lot at the Donnell Street side of the lot. I gather at issue tonight are really two special permits, one about the driveway and the second about allowing for two structures in the rear rather than one combined. And we would support both of those special permits, particularly because of our concern about the way the property faces Donnell Street.
Thank you. Patricia Benjamin?
Yes, I'm the other person who lives at 8 Donnell Street, and,
Could you please state and spell your name? for
oh,
me?
Patricia Vigderman, Vigderman.
Thank you.
The main concern that I have is with the possibility of adding trees on the front. I mean, one of the things that we've wanted on Donnell Street for a long time is more trees, and because the sidewalk is very narrow, we haven't been able to do that. And so the possibility of having a space where there would be room for trees is extremely attractive for the whole neighborhood. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Heather Hoffman?
Hello, Heather Hoffman, 213 Hurley Street, and I don't live anywhere near this. My interest in this is actually personal, however. I know the people who are happy and unhappy about this. Specifically, you all know that I know Charlie Teagan. I also know Peter Cohen, who lives next door. And I'm not going to speak to the merits of this because, as I've confessed before, I don't get 3 dimensions from 2 dimensions. But what I do know is that this board and city staff, when they put their minds to it, can make projects much better and can help people come to resolutions that they can all live with. And so, although this is not a 200-unit tower, it's a small project. Those are the things that matter too to the fabric of our city and our neighborhoods. And so I hope that the board will give this as much attention as you would give to the 200-unit tower and help everyone come up with not a design that I can do this because I can do this, or because this is going to make money, or whatever reason, but because it's going to be good for the neighborhood. So that's my request. Thanks.
Thank you. Linda Tanit?
Janet, can I swap with Michael? We share the same house, and hopefully first you've got a picture.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Shea, O''S-A-G-A, and Linda and I live at 338, 340 Walden Street. We are sort of catty corner abutters to the rear. I took a photo from our back deck, and I'd like to share it with the board. As you can see, the site is, at the moment, it's a green site. The properties on both sides of the site have prominent structures backing up to the rear lot. This site would sort of fill in, this proposal would fill in the site so that we would have a view of 3 structures across the back from our view. We would like to see the rear structure move forward, pushed up towards Donnell Street, so that there could be some additional greenery, you know, in the back from our view, from our back deck. I think that's the essence of it. We feel like there's been, you know, this encroachment up to the back lot lines, and, you know, we'd like to see more green and less buildings. Is that about it?
That's about it, but I'll add my 2 cents for you, just hesitation. My name is Linda McJanet, NC, capital Janet. And as Michael said, we share the house, one of the abutters to the rear. And I've heard a number of comments about landscaping in the front, but not very much about landscaping in the rear. And the trees that you can see there now are not actually on the site that is under discussion. They're on Peter's site. And I just would like to second what Michael said. We do feel a little bit hemmed in. The gray house, I understand, that was sort of dropped in from the sky as a prefab some years ago, would not be allowed now. And we also are downhill, so even if a structure is not all that tall, we are already downhill from it, and it will loom rather large from our perspective. So if there's any way to shrink the courtyard and move everything up a little, that would be a plus from our point of view. And particularly, we'd appreciate some greenery to screen the third building that will now infill the open space that we look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Bollerton.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Steve Bollerton, O-T-I-N. I am one of the residents at 7C Donnell Street. I'm also one of the trustees of the Stapleton Court Condominium Trust, representing units 7A, B, and C. Other than Mr. Cohen, we are the ones directly most affected by this particular development. So we have certainly paid very close attention and worked very closely with the developer to see what is going on. We've seen 2 proposals here tonight, the by right design and the special permit design. The by right design is one large, long, looming structure. I think that in terms of shading for the neighborhood, it's the worst design we could possibly have. We've essentially heard nothing positive about it. We've heard people objecting to the driveway and garage in the front of the street, the limited amount of landscaping that it would allow, the limited amount of open space that it would allow, the above-ground vehicle use. It is in essence the anathema of what the neighborhood stands for. The special permit design, 2 buildings, is very consistent with the neighborhood. I myself am in a 2-building unit, 7A being a single building, 7B and C being the 2 townhomes in the rear. We've seen that 11 Donnell Street is also 2 buildings, although the rear is office space / studio space, but 2 large buildings. That's pretty consistent. So 2 reasonably sized buildings with the best use of light for the neighborhood would certainly be the preference of the people at 7 Donnell Street. Additionally, we appreciate the design utilizing underground parking versus above ground parking. Obviously, traffic is an issue on the street as a one-way street that's used as a cut-through quite frequently, coming from Walden, Sherman, and those streets back into Concord Avenue. So the idea of keeping the street a little bit clearer, having cars being able to come forward, back out of a garage rather than backing into what is a very narrow street at a T no less from R.C. Kelly, which is really the only way that we can get in often, is the benefit as well. At present, the building that's there is a small, squat building. It's very unattractive. The photos, I think, don't remotely do it justice. The back, frankly, is even worse looking from where we stand. Ultimately, other than the shade issue that Mr. Cohen faces, I face the biggest effect of this design. By allowing the 2-unit design, which moves further back, that comes the closest to my windows, my decking, my space. So I've got a lot to say when it comes to that. And yet I'm still willing to support this particular proposal as the best use of the site. If you're going to put 2 buildings on the site, or 2 units, and that is consistent with the neighborhood, and that is what's permitted. If you're going to put 2 units, I would prefer that we put 2 units there that provides some measure of open space, some opportunity for landscaping, some opportunity for light to pass through, and certainly an opportunity to prevent a great deal of windows and other things staring right on top of each other. Cambridge is a mixed urban/suburban space, and I think I'd like to see something that sort of meets both of those criteria, giving us that urban feel that we love in terms of community, but still giving us some of that openness. Thank the committee for its time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Peter L. Cohen at 11 Donnell Street, Apartment 1, and joined here by my wife, Michelle Mentis Cohen. I came with a prepared letter, but a lot of facts seem to have changed without me realizing, so I'm going to have to depart from my text a little bit and just comment on some of the things that have been said tonight. I was particularly surprised to see that a new set of plans have now come in that we haven't received. Up till now, the trustee of the trust that owns it and the developer, Charlie Teague, have been pretty good about getting us stuff. We're trying to work things out together, but sometimes there's delay. I don't know what the reason is tonight, but I do know that the plans that you're looking at now and that were shown in this presentation are different than the special permit plans that we've seen in some non-trivial ways. So I would really like to get the most up-to-date plans and showing all the 3D versions as much as we can, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint. One of the questions, much has been made about the shadow studies. I'm still trying to figure out, can we rely on the accuracy of the shadow studies? Who did them, for example? What is the consequence of relying on them? What if they turn out to be wrong? The concern for accuracy and detail that Hugh Russell mentioned also concerns me. I think even if we all pull together and ultimately agree on an ultimate plan, there's going to be a year of construction. There'll be lots of meetings and lots of important attention to detail. Things just go wrong to some extent by nature, but getting things accurate now is important. Attorney Costa has said things that make it sound like right now it's a vast wasteland in the backyard, that somehow the proposal creates new green space. I see it rather differently. Having lived there for 22 years next door, it's been a variety of sort of semi-forested out back, which has recently been cut back to more grassy open areas. It's very nice, but I understand the economic pressure to build housing at every opportunity. I should say, despite my perhaps critical tone about many aspects of this project, that we're not fundamentally against the zoning relief being asked for. Nobody likes the so-called by right plan. The idea of underground parking probably has merit. We're not against the idea of granting the two special permits requested. One of the things that I'm wondering is, when you make a grant, though, to what extent now does that lock the developer in to specific designs, so that he says, oh, I can't now change anything, I'm going to have to go back to the board. So from my point of view, any relief that's granted should leave the developer some flexibility so that they can, with the consent of the affected abutters, make desirable changes. We have not found the developer very forthcoming in terms of responding to our clearly articulated concerns when it comes to shadow and privacy. On the other hand, we've had much more productive discussions about open space and greenery, and there perhaps is some deal to be made. I should just point out, however, that so we would like some version of what's being proposed here. ultimately, however, it has a big effect on us. We would lose at least 8 large trees, 35 to 40 feet, that are hard to replace exactly. And to do the construction that they're proposing would require access to one of our driveways, which would be out of commission for a long time, and to go do the underground parking. They would just need cooperation. These are areas which are beyond the ken of the board to grant. These are arrangements between private parties that have to be made. So you have a lot of collective experience and wisdom, and I agree completely with Heather Hoffman's point that it would be great to give this project your tender, loving care and improve it in whatever ways are possible. Because we don't have, or at least we personally don't have at hand every accurate detail, I wouldn't think it a bad thing to continue the hearing to a new date not far in the future, so that we could all be on the same page, literally, in terms of the details of the proposal. And as I've said, we would like to get to yes in supporting this. There are a lot of further particular points I could respond to, but I don't want to wear out my welcome, and I'd be happy to supplement them in writing, especially after having a chance to look at the transcript. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Cohen. I'm a little confused. 8 trees, are they on the 9 Donnell property, or are they on your property?
Sorry. There are 8 large trees that are on our property. 7 of them are very close to the property line. The 8th one is about 2 feet back, but they're all so big that really any, the removal of the existing garage will undermine one of them, or 2 of them actually. And then the removal, then the excavation necessary to do the underground parking will almost surely, kill the roots of whatever is there. And that's why if we do get to some kind of consensus plan, it will involve some degree of tree replacement. They won't be as tall trees, but they're nice trees. So the good news is that they're planting specialists, and ours have a good relationship and are having good, productive conversations. That's sort of where we've been making the most progress, I would say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, with none appearing, board members who are prepared to discuss this. Actually, I would like to hear from Susanna as to any comments she may have about the design. We have received some comments in the memo, but there have been some changes made since the memo, and what do you have to say about it?
Thank you, and I have to admit my plans were the October version, so I'm maybe a little bit behind. But you have our memo, which we do talk about the sort of the modest scale and building footprint that we think fits in with the neighbourhood. The underground parking is beneficial from an urban design perspective because we do avoid the double garage on the street frontage. And we also understand the need for the sort of additional privacy on the street facade, that we would like to see more glazing and more sort of fenestration perhaps on that street facade, as well as making the building be more prominent. The retaining wall was an issue that we raised in our memo as well, and I think the height is kind of stepping down, which is an improvement, and we just want to make sure that height was minimised, especially when it turns around to the side of the driveway, because it can be quite imposing for pedestrians. I didn't have a good look at the shadow diagrams, so but it looks like there's not a huge amount of overshadowing from what I can see. And there's still areas of sunlight to the neighbouring properties. Are there any questions about our memo?
Not so much about your memo, but I'm curious about your comments about the design. I mean, it's very square, very rectilinear, and we have seen some of the other there are triple deckers on the street that have flat roofs, and some of the new buildings have flat roofs, but also they tend to have parapets and other factors that, you know, mitigate against the hard edge of this. You know, I know a lot of modern structures are like that. I was wondering what feelings you've had about it and how it fits into the neighborhood.
I think the modern structure does fit into the neighborhood in terms of its scale and the footprint. There are it's an eclectic mix of architectural styles in the area, and it's an evolving neighborhood, so there are newer buildings and new designs, so that is sort of changing as time progresses. I think there could be more attention paid to some of the fenestration and glazing, perhaps on the street facade, to make it better fit with the neighborhood. The flat roof, I think, fits with the triple decker next door, so it's not a huge issue in my mind.
Anyone else have questions for Susanna?
Yeah, I do. Susanna, just reiterating what you said, that it's a change in neighborhood, progressive, and so on and so forth. As we, Cambridge residents move on forward, what do you see in terms of wood buildings? I mean, this building to me, even though it doesn't fit in with the existing neighborhood, at some point we want to build things that, there's a climate change and we're faced with water, rain, wind, and whatnot, faced with something more rigid enough to last long. And by looking at these buildings, to me, sidings, the Cottage Street Irish houses were built back then, and now we're moving into the new century and so on and so forth. So I understand that the parapet roof fits into an existing building here, and I understand that this type of a design fits into a Cambridge, so on and so forth. But I wondered, are we close to making changes in these neighborhoods, that we're building something that will last longer? That's what I'm looking at, basically. And I appreciated that you said that we need more penetration. A lot of these facades, to me, it looks like one bay with a small tiny bay window at the bottom of one place, and no other penetrations. Because maybe a neighbor says, hey, I don't want a window looking at me, and they basically erase the entire window on the side. And so, in other places it shows these shutters. They're beautiful shutters, like a Beacon Hill style, that are sort of there. And so, I think
What's next door?
What's that? This is next door?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow, just reiterating what you're saying, I appreciate you pointing into it. I'm not too crazy about it. Thank you.
Susanna, I have another question. Have you had any discussions with the proponent about the as-of-right design?
We haven't had much discussion about the as-of-right design. Obviously, the parking would be the big issue with that design, and the length of the building within the site.
If they were to do something as-of-right, I don't know if you can express an opinion now, but does the garage have to be in the front?
I think you could probably work out the garage in the same location, possibly, but underground.
And still have just a one,
Move the rear dwelling forward, connect,
and they would connect that as one
possibly.
large structure.
But there'd be no open space.
Yes.
There wouldn't be the open space between the two structures, right? Steve, you had a question?
And the driveway proximity would require a special permit.
Susanna, there are a lot of things that I could talk about the design, and I would like to talk about the site plan primarily later. I just, one simple design question I want to ask, and almost arbitrarily picked out amongst the various issues here. And that's the front elevation of the building, the elevation that faces the street, which should be the one that we as a public body are most concerned about. The applicant has expressed understandable concern about lights from passing vehicles, and they responded to that concern by eliminating fenestration, which I understand works from their internal reasons, but I'm not sure it works best from a streetscape a perspective. Do you have any thoughts now or at some later date about how that could be designed to address their legitimate, understandable concerns about lighting, but could nevertheless produce a front facade which presents a more friendly, attractive, familiar face to the public way?
I think the windows could be shuttered or louvers, blinds. There are sort of ways that we can limit the lighting, so that would be possible.
Okay. Later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So, board members, what do we wish to do right now?
I wish to make some comments.
What a surprise.
I think they've made the case that the basic design of two buildings, a space in between, a garage under that, is a very sensible approach to maxing out the development potential on the site. I'm also not concerned, and apparently Mr. Cohen isn't concerned, that the driveway that goes next to his house will remain. It'll be less visible because it'll be heading downhill. So those are the two things we have to make findings on. And I think we can do that. Now, the things I'm not happy about are, along with my colleague Stephen Cohen, is the front elevation. I think we should attach a condition that the amount of glazing on the front elevation be similar to the glazing on other elevations and similar to the proportion of glazing in other structures on the street. I believe, people with their headlights on driving during the day really aren't the problem. And at night, most people have blinds and close them. And that means, of course, the street doesn't benefit at night from overlooking, but that's the way it is. There are three windows right now. There's one that's apparently about this big in the kitchen. There's one in the front entry hall that just stops. I mean, the view stops, but it's also got glass you can't see through. So if the stair light's on, you might see something, the basement stair light. And then there's one which apparently is up kind of high in the corner of the bedroom. It's a little unclear. It may actually be a normal window, but on the elevation is what I think it's pointed. So I think simply more windows. Clearly the other elevations have lots of windows. They're really quite interesting. And they've thought about getting light and blocking views. It's been done very thoughtfully. And I think they have to let go of the traffic coming down the street is going to ruin things, and open up to the street more. And then trees. I think they need to, if they've got to cut down a bunch of Mr. Cohen's trees to build their building, they should replace those trees. And I think we should have a condition about the street trees in front, the people across the street on Donnell Street. And then for Mr. Shea, and they would like to have a couple of trees in the backyard. It's 35 feet deep. There's clearly room for planting there. You can discuss it. I mean, if you want to maximize the open area, that might be like a hemlock hedge along the property line, but And in some ways, all of these items are things that need to be discussed with the specific abutters that come up. And I don't see any, I think they're willing to have those discussions, but I think we as a board should say, when it's all done, there should be more trees and the abutters should be happy. Now
We ever made all the butters happy.
It should be a condition.
it's interesting here that everybody who's spoken has said they think, this plan is a better plan. Now, admittedly, the alternative plan is, although it's a right, is not a very good plan. And there could be better plans by being a little more inventive with a section to have the front house be over the parking or have the parking come down the side. But that would not be better than the one that they like that the other people that feel makes sense to them. Now, this is a rendering. These renderings are kind of schematic. And they show a sort of bluish gunmetal gray house with black window frames. This is not the friendliest color scheme in the world. Again, we don't, I think, dictate color schemes on a residential level, but it could be more friendly. And I don't know how, do we put a condition or do we just turn to the proponent and say, it could be more friendly if there weren't black windows and gunmetal gray?
If you look at the other houses in the rendering, I'm not saying the rendering is really that accurate, but it's just a couple of shades of gray we're talking about. This house has a black roof, that has a black roof, this is gray. I'm not necessarily hanging on to the color scheme at all, but I'm just saying that it's...
commenting, and that part of the severeness of the design comes from these renderings, which, the building could be as bad as a rendering, but it's not likely to be.
So much for AutoCAD.
Right. Well, it's a great challenge, and particularly it's a great challenge in rendering color when you're printing it on the one hand, you're projecting it on the other, and you're seeing it on your screen, trying to design it. So, I think we really ought to approve this, and I think we have to just sort through the testimony and make sure we've covered the various concerns that people have to do as Heather said, do our thing, but try to make it as good as it can be.
Hugh, I have a question for you. Do you have any thoughts or comments about it's the rear facade of the rear building, which is just a blank wall?
The
front facade. Yeah, I mean, the entry is at the other end of this. So whatever you want to call it, the facade that's on the courtyard.
Yeah.
Which, the front building is looking out through their large windows at the courtyard and at this blank wall.
That's unfortunate.
With this patrols.
Right, but there are things you can do. I mean, are there lots of corner windows in this building? Maybe a window that just wraps around the corner a little bit. I believe the blank facade is facing south. Is that correct, more or less?
No.
Southeast. So I mean, it's an opportunity to get some sun, more sun, an opportunity to maybe get some views towards the street, sort of, particularly where the two driveways between 9 and 11 give you quite a wide space. It's also a place where you could be intruding on the privacy of the people who are to love them. So I think it could be improved without creating big problems. Because it's sort of odd, like the lots of windows in the walls that face number 7. There's no windows facing the front house.
Do the same thing with high windows, it still retains some degree of privacy.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Please.
I agree entirely with you. I just wanted to do a few more specifics. Just, when I look at a proposal like this, I think it's, as Catherine knows, it's all about context. And it's sort of the existing patterns of development in the area, and most especially the immediate abutters. I mean, this house complies with the FAR requirements. Virtually no, I think according to the list we saw, no other house on the block complies with the FAR requirements. They all have more gross floor area than is permitted under current zoning. I think this area at some point must have been downzoned, and as frequently happens in Cambridge, a neighborhood is downzoned, and virtually every existing house and structure in the neighborhood ends up being non-conforming. This house, or this proposal, as redeveloped, will actually be just about the most conforming structure in the neighborhood. So it conforms as to FAR. As far as the issue of the rear building and the 75 foot setback, well, each of the properties on either side of it present the same nonconformity. So in terms of patterns of development, it's very consistent with its immediate abutters. The change by redeveloping this lot improves the setbacks front, side, and side. So now all the setbacks will be conforming. Currently, they're not conforming. The parking, as we've pointed out, will be going underground. That's not required. Parking is permitted on grade. By placing it underground, it improves the views for the neighbors. The as-of-right options, well, as applicants frequently do, the as-of-right options presented are the worst possible as-of-rights design that they can come up with. I agree with you. You can do better, but I also agree with you that even though you can do better, they're not going to be superior to what is presented to us, and they're likely to be inferior to what is presented to us. So for all those sort of site planning and zoning reasons, I would certainly support the permits required for this proposal. Having said that, however, on the design and architecture in general, I've got some concerns. Some of them that arise from just the accuracy and details. I'm not sure that everything has really been worked out well or thought through well. And I think we should have some sort of mechanism as a condition of any approval here for further review by the city, perhaps ideally by Susanna Bigelin, and we can discuss whether or not it ultimately has to come back to the board. But I don't think that this is a matter of go back and do better and then come back. I think this is something that requires sitting down with somebody and discussing the design issues and and working with a staff person to address and improve the design. And then I think the last thing that I'd say is, as a developer myself, I've heard through this proposal what they paid for the lot. I'm looking at what's being proposed. I'm thinking through some of the numbers involved here. I don't know if anybody's done budgeting yet, but I really question the economic viability of this proposal. And I hope that we don't go through this entire exercise and then find that it's not viable. And there's two different versions of not being viable. One is, turns out, can't do the project, and it doesn't happen, and we're back to the drawing board. The other version is that they go forward with the project, but they start cutting corners, and it doesn't get done quite the way it's being presented to us. And I think it's important that whatever it is that we do ultimately approve after whatever sort of design review process they go through, that we be sure, and the neighbors be sure that it actually does get developed and built the way it's presented and approved to us. And as I say, economic viability creates some concerns in my mind about that. But those reservations aside, in general, from a site plan and zoning perspective, I think it's a proposal that we should approve with appropriate conditions.
So I just have one. I've been studying the historic zoning ordinances. And in 1924, it was an R3 district, which is roughly the same as Residence C1. It became Residence C1 in 1940s when the 43 when the major rezoning happened. Sometime between then and 1970, it was downzoned to Residence B. I don't have any maps in between them in that 27-year period. But I think most of the structures in the neighborhood were probably built before 1924, and those that weren't were built between 24 and 43. Probably the additions that were shown in the townhouse across the street, if they didn't get zoning variances, are conforming. The other point I guess I would make about conformity is that the basements of these structures don't count, even though they're fitted out as living space, because the ceiling height is 6'11", although now it can be raised. The council really keeps that basement provision that he just passed, sort of. So, that's what I can glean from the maps.
Anyone else have any other comments?
So, I'm just going to speak to the points that we haven't talked about yet. The attorney for the project says there was nothing in the structure that was in code compliance, and I doubt with the historical or a landmark, depending on what city you're in. They usually don't really. They give you a recommendation of how to actually put it back into historical, if it was a historical building, and then how to do the repairs and so on and so forth. So have they given you the go-ahead to demo?
They have.
They have, okay, so there's no point in mentioning that, okay.
We don't have a demolition permit in hand.
That's
because
okay.
Your ordinance requires that we get the
But they
permit.
said, yeah, okay, good, and I just wanted to clear that.
Well, they said more than 6 months ago, they put a demolition stay on. The stay has expired.
In that period, they could have started the process to landmark it, and they chose not to.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that point, and the second point is, this would be for Charlie on the water detention, for lack of a better word, are you tying those, is that going to a dry well, or are you tying into the city drain?
No, there's no connection to the city sewer system. It's all
Not
it's
necessarily the sewer
right, no,
system, but-
it's a series of leaching pits in the rear yard.
Okay, so it's dry.
That will hold some vast quantity of storage. So there's infiltration into the ground, which takes a while, and then there's retention in the tanks above it.
And you have a cylinder gonna work, and you said on that, because I'm worried about the elevation. You have the stone walls there, the retaining walls, but unless you're going down, normally these leaching things, they go down to 5 feet or so. If you got a
Well,
drop
we-
6
we-
feet on the stone, you're gonna have water coming out of those retaining stone walls.
Well, we had an extensive series. We did borings at number 7 and on site. We put in monitoring wells, and it's 14. Groundwater is 14 feet down in the rear yard.
So, this being the first public hearing, Mr. Chairman, this is the first public hearing we have in this project.
Yes.
I normally would not really, given the drawings that we have, and so on and so forth, and also some of the neighbors saying we have not seen these drawings. Would you like to speak to why were the drawings not given to some of the abutters before tonight?
I will. So I mentioned when I first got underway that we had made various submittals to the board over a period of a few months. I can't speak to what any individual abutter might have in his or her possession. I know Mr. Cohen indicated that he had not seen the latest iteration. If by latest iteration he means the version that was submitted to you on January 7th, which was what, last Thursday or Friday? Thursday? That was because we received the CDD memo, and all that was done in those revised plans where we attempted to address the 2 issues that they raised. The issue with respect to the stone wall at the front of the property and trying to segment that into 2 smaller stone retaining walls, and then to add an additional window to the front of the site. I know that multiple members have mentioned a concern with the lack of windows in the front of the site. Well, it was worse than you're seeing on the plans prior to the current version. So we added a single window there, and to do that, it actually required a fair amount of shifting within the floor plan to provide for a window above a sink that was relocated from another area of the kitchen. So those 2 changes were made to that plan. That's all between that and the earlier version of the plan.
Thank you, I feel a lot better about that. I really do, thank you. So those are my comments, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
No.
Sorry, no.
I was going to ask you if I could.
No. So I guess the first question, Mary, did you want to?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think, the members have raised all of the relevant points, and there really isn't anything that has been said that I would disagree with.
Right, no, I think between Hugh and Steve, they've covered all the issues we could raise. So the question is, are we prepared to go forward this evening on what we have before us and what has been stated, or do we feel there is a need for this to come back to us?
I for one, don't think it needs to come back to us, but I do think that it needs a design review process with staff.
Right, well, that no problem.
I'd agree with that. I think, as Hugh accurately put, we have enough information to make the findings we need to for the special permits that have been requested.
I agree with that too. I think we have leave to staff a lot larger issues on a lot larger projects, and I think with the information that's been elicited tonight, they have a pretty clear idea of what we think, and that if they run into a problem, they can bring it back to us. Is there anyone who feels to the contrary? If not, then somebody would like to make a motion. Perhaps you could make a motion incorporating.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just before you start doing this, this is the point where I point out one full board member is absent, and so one of the associate members need to be appointed to vote on this case.
Over there.
Thatcher?
Thatcher's in the house.
You want to
Who's on the
vote on
side?
this? Happily. I mean, you can still vote too.
It just doesn't count.
It just doesn't count.
I'm not so glad.
We don't want to exclude anyone.
Time to shine.
Yeah.
So perhaps you, before zoning ordinance section 5.53. There are two provisions allowing two structures on one lot in the Residence B district. One requires that all portions of the structure be no further than 75 feet from the street line. That is not possible in this situation, and so there is a provision for a special permit from the planning board, providing that the board finds, and there are two alternative findings we could make. The first is that the development in the form of two or more structures on the lot will not significantly increase or may reduce the impact of the new construction should it occur in a single structure. So if we can find that, then we don't have to go to the alternative, which then has 6 subsections where we would need to make some findings on. Do people feel that we can conclude that this will not significantly increase or it may reduce the impact of new construction should occur in a single structure?
Yes.
Yes. We all feel that? Fine. And then the other special permit is
Six point four four.
6.44.1. Sets forth the setbacks for open grade parking facilities in the zoning districts, and ultimately concludes that in 441G that the Board of Zoning Appeal may grant a special permit to allow for modification of the requirements in 6441A or B if site-specific factors favor such modification. The first issue is that because we are granting a special permit with regard to the project as a whole, we are entitled to issue that special permit that would otherwise be issued by the Board of Zoning Appeal. And we have heard reference to the site-specific factors which might authorize modification in this case. And so
I think the principal site-specific factor is the existence at the present areas, both of which are on the property line, one of which is slightly over property line. That's the present condition. The proposed condition perpetuates that thing, which allows for lots of open space between the structures.
right, and specifically the issue is here is that it should be more than 5 feet from the building wall, but because of the configuration of the lot, that would be impossible. So are we all willing to make that finding? Yes. Okay. So,
and then there's the general special permit findings, and
10.43.
Attorney Costa referred to in the urban design criteria analysis he made, which I have not yet found in the paperwork, but which I'm pretty sure Liza just gave me.
No, I think it was in a previous package.
It was in the November submittal, included a single document that was the urban design guideline, the guidelines and how each of them were satisfied in the applicant's estimation.
How's been our practice to look at those and see if we agree with the analysis and think it's the document, well, it's dated 10/15/2015. Maybe there's a later document that I don't have. The 10/15 has the global special permit criteria, which first is the requirements of zoning ordinance will be met. If we have a permit, I think we believe that's true. The traffic generator pattern access egress will not cause congestion hazard or substantial change in neighborhood character, and that was a subject of some design modifications suggested by the traffic and parking department to tweak the design. The continued operation of adjacent uses will not be adversely affected. We basically had the butters on 3 sides provided testimony in support of the proposal. Nuisance or hazard, and we might reference under that the attention of the city engineer to the groundwater, and the applicant's quite unusual and extensive engineering work. Not typical for residents, but that seems to have that under control. And then the urban design criteria, and I would just rely on Suzanne's analysis of the site, and remember that should be us. So, I would move that we grant the 2 requested special permits. The findings have been summarized, and that we would require that there be additional design review of the project that would review any future changes that might come up, that would address the planting of trees to provide either amenity to the street or buffering to the abutters, and enlarge the amount of glazing facing the street.
I would also suggest we add that we received a memo from Traffic and Parking dated January 12, 2016, with a couple of conditions in there relating to the driveway and the slope of the driveway and the stone wall, and that final designs be reviewed and approved by Traffic and Parking, and that the project be reviewed and approved by DPW to ensure conformance with Public Rights Way.
Is that included the curb cut?
Well, we don't grant the curb cut. The city council grants the curb cut if they need to get one.
I think they're probably,
There is
it's going to
one
be
there.
enlarged.
Right, but that's not something we do.
Could I also suggest, with just a little bit more specificity, that if and to the extent the development of this site is responsible for the loss of trees on Peter Cohen's abutting property, that the owner, the developer, the applicant will either take steps, to protect those trees, or if those trees are lost, to provide for a mutually agreeable replacement of trees. And this relates to trees not on the applicant site, but on the abutting parcel.
Address up that.
Anyone else have any other proposed conditions? Jeff, are you clear on?
I'm going to see if she'll nod about this. I do think there was one, in addition to the glazing, there was a point about the entrance and looking at the front entrance to the building and looking at ways to make that more engaging with the street. But besides that, I think that covers everything.
I think that could be just looking at the glazing, if it's tinted or
Right.
not.
I think looking at the glazing, actually, both in the front facade and also in all the facades, the rear building too.
A, there's a door here.
Okay.
Do we also want to add something generally about checking the materials and colors of the, at least public facades?
Well, I assume that will fall into
That's included in what we said.
CDB's review of things. I think they have continuing review, and if there's some issue that they can't resolve, that they will bring back to us. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Anyone opposed? No, it's unanimous. Thank you all very much. We have no other matters on the agenda for this evening.
Thank you all for your time this evening. We appreciate it.
Started at 9.